My sister had a bad car accident and ended up being quadriplegic, and I was having a pretty tough time mentally with that. And going skiing was like an escape, you know. It kind of made me forget about it for a little bit. When you're up in the mountains and you're climbing up a mountain, let's say, and you get to the top, it's like a feeling that's pretty hard to explain.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Rose Bros podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Rose. Centered around a cup of Rose Bros coffee, my goal is to share the stories and life lessons of other entrepreneurs, athletes, and interesting people in general to help you succeed better in your life. Today, we are joined by Stan Rey, professional skier, member of the Salomon Freeride Team, and co-owner of Blank Collective Films. Stan grew up ski racing for the Whistler Mountains Ski Club, and as a teenager, made it onto the British Columbia ski team where he was a member for 2 years. From there, Stan went on to spend 3 years on the Canadian National Ski Cross team, where he won a Canadian national title and had a 4th place finish at the X Games. Stan then transitioned back to his love of free skiing, where he became a sponsored Salomon athlete and co-founder of Blank Collective Films, an award-winning film company focused on extreme skiing. Stan has starred in and directed numerous Blank Collective films and YouTube miniseries, and currently counts a personal best of backflipping a 70-foot cliff among his many adventures. Stan and I talked about many things in this episode, including finding clarity in the mountains, multiple career transitions, and how fitness and psychology play into extreme sports. I hope you enjoyed the show. Stan, welcome to the show. Thanks for sitting down. I appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Trevor.
How'd you get into skiing? It was kind of in your blood, I guess.
My grandpa grew up ski racing and went to Olympics, and my dad also ski raced and got the Swiss development team. And when I was born, they had me skiing pretty much before I could walk. I fell in love with it right away. And when I was a kid, my dream was to go to the Olympics like my grandpa. Grew up ski racing, and then along the way, lost a little passion for the sport of ski racing, but I always loved skiing, so kind of transferred into ski cross and then did that for a couple of years until I found myself on a pair of fat powder skis and ripping around like I used to on my slalom skis when I was a kid.
One of your features in your films is the backy Sunday. I think you do more backflips in a day than I'll ever do in my life. I've never even done a backflip. So you grew up in Switzerland with your parents.
I grew up in Switzerland skiing there. I started kind of ski racing at a super young age. My parents actually came over to Canada to visit some friends that had moved to Pemberton. This was in 96, so I would have been 8 years old. They really loved the place and wanted a little bit of a change in life, and they just packed up, sold the house, and moved to Whistler. My sisters and I finished school because we were still in school, and then lived with my grandparents. And that summer we moved to Whistler, summer 96. And then I got here, learned English because I only spoke French. That was pretty easy for me, but a little harder for my parents. I started ski racing, I think, 2 years after that at the Blackcomb Ski Club. And that took me well into my 20s. I ski raced till I was 21. I actually had the pleasure to ski race with you.
Absolutely.
For a few years on the provincial team.
Yeah.
We had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And then I did a couple of years when I retired there. I actually got kicked off the BC ski team when I was 20, and I wanted to keep going. So I went back to the ski club for a year and tried to make the national team. But
did you? I didn't know you did that.
Yeah, I went back and raced one year in the ski club.
With Whistler?
With Luca Moretti. And I broke my wrist that year. So it was already a bad start. Broke my wrist training slalom. And then I didn't have that good of results, and I just decided to try some ski cross fairly well at nationals. So I'm like, I'll go race NORAMs, and ended up racing the NORAMs that year. I got the 4 on the Olympics in 2010, which was super fun. And then I raced 2 years of World Cup, 2011, 2012, and had some success here and there, but my head was elsewhere and skiing big mountains and skiing POW. So I switched to that. And then I hustled for a few years to try to make a name for myself, and finally got a break. And now I get to kind of live the life I've always wanted to live, being a professional skier. Not quite the Olympian that I once wanted to be, but still really enjoy the lifestyle and traveling the world to go skiing.
Also, an owner of Blank Collective Films, the production company, outdoor skiing and whatnot.
This was about 5 years ago now. My buddy Alexi and Casey made a ski movie, and it was called Blank. And they made a little movie, and then after that year, Alexi wanted to do something more than just make a ski movie, and he asked me if I wanted to start a ski movie company with him. And it so happened that we ended up calling the company Blank Collective Film. Super creative. Since then, yeah, we didn't really know what we were doing, but asking for money from sponsors and trying to send pitches out and have no clue what we're doing the first couple of years. And we're one of the staples in ski movies, I would say, in the ski industry, which is kind of cool. And our biggest goal is to try and showcase the fun that we're having out there, and also some of the skill sets that we've learned along the way. It's fun trying to compete with guys like MSP and TGR, like stuff or at least I grew up watching when I was a kid. And it's kind of cool to be in that realm and it's cool if you can motivate kids to go skiing and get them stoked to go shredding. I mean, I think that's the coolest part.
Absolutely. So do you split the company with your partner? Do you own it 100% now? What was that like, getting it going? A lot of money? Did you have to put up?
We didn't have to put up a bunch of money because it was mainly funded by companies that we went and pitched on the movie. At first, it was definitely harder to get money because no one knew who we were, and it's kind of, it's taken a good gamble. But we were really lucky that Salomon has been a backer of the project since the start, so that we were able to get it going with that investment that they put into us.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, we've kind of grown it. We've worked with people, and we've learned a little bit more of the business side of things. And yeah, between Alexi and I, we own the company 100%. We split it down the middle, 50-50. Even though I'd say he does a little bit more work than me. He helps edit it too in the summer. He lives by our editor. Just lives like down the street by the editor that we hire. So we hire everyone too. We don't actually do the filming, and we don't do the editing. We just own the company and contract people to do all that stuff. Now that we're getting a little further along, we want to get more involved into the filming, into the editing, because I think the goal is, free skiing's not super easy on your body when you're hucking your meat off cliffs and stuff. So it'd be nice to be able to, at some point, be able to run it by ourselves, and we could be the filmers, we could do the editing, we could do all that. That's the goal, but that's like a 6-year plan maybe, or until the body tells me I can't do it anymore.
How old are you now, on that note?
I'm now 31, and I can feel it.
Can you?
I'm not as... I don't bounce back like when I was 21, I can tell you that much.
Yeah.
The old back and the shoulders are pretty sore, but with a little bit of maintenance and go to the gym, you can mitigate how sore they are.
So as a professional skier, what's your fitness routine like? Are you in the gym a lot? Do you do a lot of off-season training?
Kind of funny because I should have been where I should be. So when I quit ski racing, I was so over going to the gym and stuff. I hated it. So I stopped doing it for a good 4 years. I didn't go to the gym once. I was just doing cross training, whatever. I'd go biking, and it caught up to me pretty quick. I realized I wasn't as strong. My fitness level wasn't quite where it used to be. So in the last couple of years, I've started going back to the gym and going 4 or 5 days a week, and then really working, especially on flexibility, because I find that's when you get older, it's really important to try and stay flexible and keep those muscles nimble.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's I've actually noticed quite a big change in the last couple of years. And then also the mental side of things too, I find almost as important as staying in shape. It's super easy to not worry about it. And even as an athlete, I wish when I was younger ski racing, I wish I did more mentally, because that was my biggest problem. I'd be pretty good in training, and then you put a little pressure, like a race or something, and I would freeze and ski quite poorly. And I find that it's a lot easier to learn when you're young. It's just like a language or anything. If you do a lot of mental training when you're younger, it kind of stays infused. It's stays in there, where later on I find it really a lot harder to remember things.
So what are you doing for that? Do you have a psychologist, or there certain books you've read, or what do you?
Yeah, read books. I think reading books is really good, because even if you get one good idea, it could change your state of mind. I find meditating really helps too. I try to meditate every morning. I'm not super good at doing that every morning, but especially when I'm on the road, I find that really helps, and it clears your mind and helps you think more clearly. And then even just playing like there's some mind games on like iPhone and stuff. Those actually help too. This helps you think clearly and make decisions quickly.
Interesting.
Kind of cool.
Any philosophies you picked up or lean towards, or is it mainly just meditation? And
for what we do, visualization's huge.
Yeah.
And if you can visualize yourself, a lot of times too, you only visualize when you're in that moment. You're like, oh, let's say I want to do a backflip, and you visualize the backflip 3 times, and then you go and do it. That's awesome. That's something I do every time. You can also do that at home, which is what a lot of people don't do. And I never did it. Like, I never visualized. Even when I ski raced, I almost maybe did it a handful of times, but I almost never visualized when I was sitting on the couch at home, especially with like something, like sometimes we take pictures of something we want to ski a week before we ski it, or sometimes it's even months because the conditions don't line up. And that whole time, you could be visualizing yourself skiing it. And if you've seen yourself ski it 100 times successfully, you're way more likely to have a positive outcome on that run than if you just go and visualize it once while you're nervous standing at the top of the line.
Yeah.
And even ski racing, I never did that ski racing. And it's like, that would have been so beneficial, because downhills are almost the same every single time. They're very similar. If you visualize yourself 1,000 times. And that's where, like, talking with Kels, she said she'd visualized going into the Olympics. She's visualized that course like 100 times, 200 times, sitting in the living room. The outcome is, it's, if you can positively watch yourself ski down and feel it, even if you're standing up and actually going through the movements, it can be quite beneficial, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. So for people listening, Stan Rey is also married to, originally her name was Kelsey Sirois, now Kelsey Rey, I believe. She
hasn't legally changed her name, but yeah, she's going to be Kelsey Sirois Rey, I think. She might have to be.
Right. Kelsey is a 2-time Olympian and gold medalist.
3-time Olympian.
3-time Olympian.
She went 2010, 2014, and 2018.
She'd actually probably be a good guest for the show too.
She'd be a great guest for the show. She's got a good story too.
I'll have to ask her.
Silver medal in the 2014 Olympics, and then she won a gold medal in the 2018 Olympics.
Well, maybe I'll have to follow up her later. But anyways, Stan is married to Kelsey. I actually kind of knew Kelsey growing up too. Grew up with her, Stan, Ben Thompson. So, but getting back to Stan, was alpine racing kind of your goal then growing up? Because I know your grandpa's a pretty successful ski racer, and your dad. And what was that kind of your goal, or were you put into racing, or how'd that happen?
I definitely wasn't put into racing. Like I said earlier, it was like my grandpa went to the Olympics, and he was my biggest idol growing up until I was at least like 15, 16. I wanted to be an Olympian like my grandpa.
Alpine racer.
Yeah, alpine racing. And that was definitely the goal. Unfortunately, I didn't get to where I would have liked to in alpine racing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still super passionate. I still watch like a lot of the World Cup races. And yeah, I loved it. It was my biggest passion until about right around like 1920 is when I started kind of thinking of something else maybe, like, but I never even thought outside the ski industry. That's the funny part. And then ski cross was amazing too. And I got hurt 2 years in a row, but that dream of going to the Olympics I'd be lying if I still don't have it now, but I kind of put it behind me and live vicariously through my friends and Kelsey, I guess.
Yeah. So inspiration, who'd you look towards? Like some of those old, like Herman Myers, Bodie Millers, was there your grandpa?
Oh yeah, for sure. Herman Meyer, he's like a staple. Tomba, even though I wasn't a tech skier, he was also always exciting to watch. And I think a guy I remember liking the small guys because I was pretty small. So I liked Christian Gadina and Darren Ralph.
Yeah.
Those guys were, I mean, it's not like they were small, but they were shorter than everyone, even though they were super stocky. But they were some of the best downhill and super G skiers, which was what I loved. I loved speed skiing. I was a speed skier, even though I was 150 pounds at 5'6".
Yeah, you were a smaller guy, more or less, till you were probably around 22, I remember. I mean,
Yeah, 22, 23 even.
So
It's kind of funny. When I race, I always wanted to put weight on, and I was never heavier than like 165 pounds. And then I quit racing, and I drank a few more beers, I think.
yeah.
And then I put on like 10 pounds, no problem.
Yeah. So what do you weigh now?
I'm like 175.
So
Yeah.
still relatively light. You're not a heavy guy.
Relatively light, but it would have been beneficial if I could have been 175 when I was racing.
Yeah.
I don't think it would have made a huge difference. But
Well, that's like Ben talking to him 2 weeks ago. He kind of like you was this relatively small guy growing up in high school, and he's still not huge now, but he put on a bunch of weight.
Yeah, I hadn't seen him in a couple of years, and I saw him in Banff actually right when I saw you there. Yeah, he put on some weight. I was actually surprised. He's thick.
Yeah.
He's thick, and he was always. I mean, the reason he was so good is because he was technically so good in speed. And like I remember, he wouldn't do super well on like flat courses, and then you got him on a technical course, and he would kill it.
Yeah.
Oh, it had to be icy too, though.
Yeah.
So soft snow.
But it's kind of counterintuitive. He's put on the weight and kind of bulked up, and it's actually helped him.
Oh, for sure. I mean, when you're dealing with a downhill, it's a gravity-fed sport. You definitely want to be a bit heavier. Where me, it's actually almost beneficial to be lighter now, being a free skier, because it's easier to land things if you're lighter. It's like carrying an extra 10 pounds. I'd love to be 160 right now, but it's hard to lose weight now,
especially as you get older.
Yeah, it used to be hard to gain weight. Now it's hard to lose weight.
When you were kind of in between and your transition between racing and skier cross and then a pro all mountain skier, how was that? You tried to make the national team when you were 20?
That was tough for sure, because it was kind of like the end of a dream that I've had since I was a kid. But I had a ton of fun trying to make it that year too. And I had a coach, I think, who I actually really enjoyed technically. He was a really good coach, Luca Moretti. He's like an Italian guy that came to Whistler for a couple of years, and who was actually used to be on the Italian ski team. He was a tech skier, he was a slalom skier. And I really enjoyed it, but it was also kind of tough and frustrating not getting the results I would have liked that last year. That spring, he actually told me, he's like, instead of doing spring series out east, you should go race the ski cross in Red Mountain. So I actually ended up coming Kelsey and I did the exact same thing. We both came and raced the spring series or the nationals in Red Mountain instead of going to spring series out east. I ended up doing quite well. Pretty sure I came 7th, and I was the first non-national team athlete. So that was kind of cool. And then they invited me to a couple camps that summer to go train with them. And there was no NORAMs until February that year. So I ended up going in the summer. I ended up racing, getting some FIS points so I could start World Cups. And I was actually, I raced the first 4 World Cups, and I haven't even had him race a NORAM. And I was tuning skis. I was the third tech, so I was doing all the training skis for everyone. It was hard. It was a tough year because I was literally going to bed at like 2, 3 in the morning because we had to tune 14 pairs of skis. And then I was scraping race skis and brushing them. And then I was trying to qualify the next morning for a World Cup when I've had like 4 hours of sleep. So tired.
And that was for the skier cross at this point.
That was for skier cross, yeah. And the first 4, I didn't qualify. I came close once. I think one of the coaches yelled at me because I wasn't it was the first race, actually. It was Lake Contamine. It was my first World Cup race. I wasn't wearing I had Kelsey's old ski pants, actually, I think. And then I was just wearing like a shell, I even think it was from the BC team that I was wearing. I came 300th out of qualifying, and then the coach came and yelled at me. He said, "What were you doing? What were you doing wearing that shell, man? If you weren't wearing that, you probably would have qualified." I'm like, "I don't know. I've been training with it the last month. I thought you would know I'd be racing in it." And then I got to work for the Olympics. That was 2010. So that was right at the end of January, which was awesome. I had a ton of fun. Me and Brian Bennett, a guy actually we grew up ski racing with. He was a little older than us.
Yeah.
We built the course in Vancouver. So we were there 2 weeks before the Olympics, building the start sequence with the course builders. And that was a cool experience because there wasn't much snow that year. So they were trucking in snow from the States.
I remember that.
And they built most of the course. The berms and stuff were built with hay bales. there was a helicopter flying the snow in and dropping it on the hay bale. It was pretty wild. And then we actually had a mouse problem because there were mice in the hay bale, so we had mice running everywhere. Yeah, it was pretty entertaining. And then that was super fun. I got to forerun that Olympics, and then I got to watch the whole race, kind of front row seats, which was really cool.
All ski across.
Yeah, all ski across. Yeah, and I also got to watch the half pipe, and then I came up and watched the downhill in Whistler too, which was really fun to watch.
So that year you were still trying to qualify for the ski across team. That was 2010.
Yeah. So that was trying to qualify in 2010. So then I ended up racing NORAMs. We had a World Cup in Salt Lake, and then right after the World Cup, there was a NORAM there. So then I kind of stayed back after that World Cup and started racing the NORAM circuit, and I did very well. I think I won 4 or 6 of the 8 races that year, and then the one I didn't win. There was actually one there was a race right before the Olympics in Sugarloaf, and the Americans, or Sugarloaf, and the Americans, no, Sugar Bowl, I think it was. The Americans and the French were there. I ended up coming third in that race with all the Americans and French guys that were going to the Olympics, which was kind of cool.
Yeah.
That was the cool part too. I got to race against my idol growing up, ski racing Alpine. I got to race against Darren Ralph.
Right.
Which was pretty cool.
Because he did ski across for a while, didn't he?
Yeah, he did it for 4 or 5 years, actually. He did pretty well. I think he won X Games one year. Definitely won a couple World Cups. It was pretty funny, actually. We were at a night World Cup in St. Johann in ski cross, and they injected it, and it was really bad injection. I couldn't get any grip, and I was going up the chairlift, and I'm like, oh, this must be a forerunner. This guy is skiing so bad. And then when he got below me, it was Darren Ralph.
Really?
And I was like, oh my God, if he looks like that, I'm going to look so much worse. It was so bad. We were burning through skis too, because we were getting really bad edge burn. And it was almost impossible to hold an edge. You were just sliding around, watching a guy come down, and he ends up being like one of the best technical skiers there. That's 2010. Yeah, I ended up winning the overall NORAM title, and that got me a World Cup spot for the next year. I raced 2 years of World Cup. Got injured both years, unfortunately. But the first year, I did all right. I qualified like half the races, and then I made it through a round. I only made it through a couple rounds, actually. I think my best World Cup finish was 14th, and that was at Blue Mountain when I got hurt. Yeah. But right before Blue Mountain, we were at X Games, and I came 4th at X Games, which was super cool. I remember that race. I made finals, and I was already super nervous, and the girls' finals was right before ours. And I was already dating Kels at this time, and she was in the finals, and she had won. But so they were hitting a different jump than us at the bottom. It was a 70-footer instead of a 100-footer. But they had the same speed going into it. They didn't have anything to slow them down. So it was kind of like up to them to ditch some speed. And she was in first, and she felt that the girl who was in second, it's like right behind her, so she didn't slow down, and neither did the girl behind her, and they went flying. They landed on the finish line. Kelsey landed on her back and actually broke her back. Hopefully blew her knee. They went 145, 50 feet, landed at the finish line. So we had a huge course hold, which for me was horrible because I heard over the radio, oh, first and second went down. I think they're both injured, and I knew Kelsey won because it was over the radio.
Yeah.
So I'm dealing with the pressure of being in the finals for the first time ever. And then on top of it, I know that Kelsey's hurt. So I'm like, I'm pretty much, and that was already a stress case. Yeah, I was already a stress. But I ended up skiing. I could have skied smarter for sure and maybe ended up on the podium. But I went straight into a corner and cut off Errol Kerr and kind of took us out of the race. We were in big space between 3rd and 4th. But it was still a cool experience, and to be there and to be able to come 4th was pretty cool.
And that kind of led into the next season. Then you probably were thinking you'd keep going with ski across the next few years,
right? Yeah, I was actually thinking of maybe trying to go to the 2014 Olympics. So like I said, I got hurt in Blue Mountain, and that would have been start of February. Overshot a jump and landed in compression of another jump. And I tore both my sides of my groin and my lower abdominal. So that took me out for the season. And then following year, I had an okay season going. And then I hurt my knee about the same time. I think it was end of January. And at that point, I was kind of over it. The team dynamics at the time weren't the greatest, and I really wasn't enjoying myself. And I made the tough decision to give up on the Olympic dream and the racing World Cup ski cross. And I actually bought a sled that when I was hurt and tired from ski racing, and then started to try and make a career out of being a free skier.
So what year was that?
That would have been 20. I retired it would have been 2012. I retired in.
And that's when you decided to get into all mountain / pro free skiing.
Yeah, exactly. I pretty much just stuck around Whistler. I was luckily, one of my friends was a sub rep, Salomon. He got me hooked up with Salomon, just giving me like a pair of skis and some gear, and I'd help out with demos, kind of events like that. So I started doing that, and then I kind of leached on to Whistler Blackcomb, did a bunch of their promotional videos. It was just a good way to get exposure, and I ended up doing a little like GoPro series for them, and I started gaining a little bit of traction through that. One of my friends I went to high school with, he was filming a movie for Sherpa Cinema, which are actually out of Calgary, Canmore area, and they were filming an on-hill segment. And I just ran into my buddies like, "Oh, you want to come film this little part for a movie with us? It'd be super sweet if you kind of joined in." There was a bunch of people, and I joined in, and that pretty much started my career. And that would have been the second year I was free skiing. So that movie came out, and then after that, Mike Douglas gave me a call to ask me if I wanted to go to Japan to go film for Salomon Freeride TV, and obviously I said yes.
So Mike Douglas is who? He's a famous skier.
Mike Douglas is kind of like the godfather of free skiing. He's 50 now, and yeah, he was like he's one of like the go-to free skiing guys. He's kind of like the guy who started the twin tip.
I remember, with
a bunch of other Salomon athletes back in 97, 98, I think. Yes, and then now he owns Switchback Entertainment, who they film and produce Salomon Freeride TV, and they have been since the start. It was kind of his idea. So he called me to go to Japan to shoot for Salomon Freeride TV, and then the rest is kind of history. I went on that trip, had a ton of fun. Chris Rubens, who's actually the brother of Shona Rubens, which you would know from ski racing. Yeah. She would win all the NORAMs. He kind of vouched for me, and then we came back here, and we went and filmed another little thing just up the Sioux Valley, and I sucked at sledding. I was getting stuck everywhere. But
when you were getting going with those guys, did you just decide you were going to try whatever trick or whatever line you could possibly do and just try and impress everybody? How did that go?
I learned in my backyard when I was I learned a long time ago. It was probably my backyard when I was like 8 years old. I learned on a pair of snowblades. We built a little jump, and I learned backflips on snowblades. And then growing up in Whistler, we were always free skiing. Especially our coaches were super cool. If it snowed more than like 25 centimeters, like, oh, we're gonna go free skiing. We're not gonna slip the course for half an hour and get 2 runs out of it. So we'd go free skiing, and I was always like one of the crazier kids. So I was always trying to backflip or 360 off things. So I kind of been doing it the whole time just for fun. Like I even remember coaches would hate for us to wait at the bottom for our buddies to go do a run, like from the bottom of our training run to the chairlift. So we'd go around the corner and wait for like a good little group of like 4 or 5 of us. And then we'd hit this jump run that we had going back down to the bottom of Garbanzo or Orange Chair. Yeah. And we'd be hucking backflips and like chucking our, it was pretty fun. It was pretty funny. And we'd even like, on one of them was like, there's a road that goes back and there's a lower maintenance road, which is just like that snowmobile road. And we'd duck from that road, ski the pow trees, and then hit the other road that would end up coming back to the chairlift. And sometimes we get so stuck in the pow because we were on our little slalom skis or GS skis, and we would take like half an hour to do a run when the other kids were doing like 15 minutes. And they're like, oh, this guy's been doing 15 runs today, and you guys are only on your 6th. What are you guys doing?
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, I don't know.
So then when it came time to you were trying to kind of get into the free skiing scene, you obviously had all this practice. So and then you thought to yourself, all right, I'm just going to do the craziest stuff I can possibly do.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Now I'm definitely a little smarter now, but back then I was like, oh yeah, I'll just huck a backy off of here and with no landing and see how it goes. And yeah,
How else do you break into that industry? You have to stand out somehow.
you either gotta be crazy or you gotta be really business savvy. Or if you're both, you're probably the best.
Yeah.
Or just find your little niche. And for me, ascending, I always loved scaring myself. That's why I like speed so much when growing up ski racing. I love trying to challenge myself by possible limit. And yeah, that's kind of what I did at the start. I was kind of just hucking backflips everywhere.
Huge, not just
anywhere.
Like big cliffs.
Yeah. But even I remember one I remember pretty well too. It was one of the first bigger backflips I've done off a cliff. And it was in Mammoth. And we had a POW day, so we didn't get the race. And we were skiing our GS skis, and I hucked like a 40-foot backflip on my GS skis. I was so comfortable with doing backflips because I've done so many of them, like on slalom skis, GS skis, growing up, that it's almost like easier for me to backflip something if you don't have to jump, if you can just ski off the end, because you're doing something, and it's really easy to slow your rotation down. You're doing something instead of just doing a straight air where you're just staring at the ground the whole time.
Really?
With a backflip, you set it. And if you set it too hard, you can open up and slow your rotation down pretty easy. And if you set it too slow, then you can try and throw your legs up a little harder and pull them through with your core. That being said, I under-rotated a double backflip just a couple of days ago.
So that hurts.
Yeah, it hurts if you're landing on firmer snow, but we were skiing like 70 centimeter POW, so it didn't hurt very much.
Do you think you were just born with that kind of like ability? Like, that's hard to train.
It's kind of funny because all my dad and my grandpa, we kind of all grew up being maybe a couple screws loose, a little crazier than most. And then, yeah, it is hard to train. You're right. But it's actually pretty crazy how the body can make split-second decisions and be quite accurate. That's what I'm like blown away, because sometimes we're like at the bottom of a line and we'll look at a cliff and be like, oh, that's about 30 feet. And realistically, it might be 20 feet, or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it's 40 feet. And you ski to the edge of it, and right before you go off, you make a split-second decision where you're like, oh, I'll set my backflip this hard because it's this big. And it usually ends up being like really close, which is pretty cool how the body can do that by looking at something for a split second. I think it's something I was maybe born with, that ability to kind of disconnect and be a little bit loose, but at the same time calculated. Yeah.
So what do you think about when you're going out? Do you think at all?
Well, yeah, I definitely think it's definitely intuitive, but at the same time, it's also a bit of thinking. Like any line we ski,
calculated.
We always have, it's calculated. We always have an out, or I do at least. I look at a line and I always do like little 3 steps. It's like, okay, where am I going to go? Obviously, that's the main one. If something goes wrong, where's a safe spot, or the safe spot to go to? Because that's avalanches, and mitigating slough slough management is super important.
Yeah.
So that's a safety side of things. Where am I going to go? How am I going to get out of it? And then the third one is, how am I going to do it?
Right.
How am I going to do this? And how am I going to get to that point? And then after that, when I get to the top, I kind of just shut off and it becomes automatic because I visualized it about 5. I usually try to visualize like 5 to 10 times. The scarier the thing, I try to visualize a couple more times to make sure I've got it dialed. You
probably don't measure things, cliffs, jumps, and whatnot, but is there a biggest cliff you've ever launched off of? Do you have anything?
Yeah, probably. I think the biggest cliff I've aired off was probably about 70 feet.
70 feet.
And I backflipped it, and it was actually, that was in very marginal conditions too. And I thought the cliff would have been like 45, 50, and it ended up being quite a bit bigger than I thought. And I ended up landing it. I backslapped it super hard, but I landed it, and it was probably in they were bad conditions. I shouldn't have been doing that. It was like 5 centimeters on a crust.
So where was that?
That was up the Rutherford Glacier, and I was filming for Bowler's clip. I was right at the start. That was like maybe my second year free skiing.
Is that in BC?
Yeah, that's BC. Sorry, that's just outside of Whistler.
Okay.
Up a glacier, Pemberton Ice Caps. So actually, it's called.
You backflipped a 70-foot cliff.
Yeah, And it's pretty crazy because once you get over like 50 feet, I feel like when you backflip, your tips catch so much air while you're coming back that sometimes they can pitch you back forward.
Ugh.
And that it was like it would have really hurt if I under rotated it. It did just that. It like really slowed my rotation down. And if you try to like, you're gonna kind of have to like twist your feet outwards. So then instead of catching more air, you're kind of cutting through it.
Yeah.
So I kind of had to do that because I felt like I was getting a lot of pressure and I was almost going to pitch forward again. Just got it around. But actually, I have a friend who did he did a huge, I don't know how big it was. It would have been maybe 100 feet. Josh Dyack, and he does a backflip and he gets to like 3/4 and then there's so much air pushing on his hips. It actually starts pushing him forward again. And he ends up like belly flopping off of a 100-footer.
In a sport like the one you're in right now, pro free skiing, a lot of risk, potential for injury. Do you think about that? That's kind of weighing into your career. How do you mitigate the risk and the injuries and whatnot?
I definitely think about it, even when I'm like on day-to-day basis. You can obviously take more risk if you're heli skiing or on a resort because the rescue is a lot easier. If you have a helicopter there, you get hurt, they throw you in the helicopter and bring you. But a lot of the times, I want to say 90% of the times when we're filming, we're in the backcountry and we're either ski touring or sled skiing, and we are our own rescue. So that makes things a little harder logistically. A lot of the times we're like 50 kilometers away from the road. If you're really hurt, you're not sledding back. You're not taking the sled back. You're calling a helicopter, which could take, they can take up to anywhere from like 45 to a couple hours for the helicopter to get to you. That's if the conditions are good. Now, say you're filming in the trees and it's a foggy day and it's snowing, this helicopter's not going to pick you up. You kind of have to deal with yourself. So that's definitely something that every day we kind of make an assessment on what the conditions are and AVI conditions, and you kind of mitigate risk in that portion. I mean, you never think of getting hurt, obviously. It's not like,
you can't think like that.
I don't want to do a backflip here and get hurt.
No.
Don't think like that. But it definitely has to be in the back of your mind, though, because if something does go wrong, you need a plan of action to be able to get the person out or stay put until help comes to you. So that's and we don't really film much with helicopters. We just mainly film on our sleds, ski touring, and then with drones.
How is your health these days? Would you say your body's holding together pretty well? Because I remember when we were younger, you had some issues with concussions.
Yep. I did have concussion issues when I was younger, and surprisingly, I've only had one concussion free skiing, and it was a stupid one. It was free skiing in Japan, and I just did a turn over like a little hump, and there was an alder buried, and I kind of hit it with my tips, and the alder sprung up and uppercut me, hit me like in the bottom of the jaw, and knocked me out. It wasn't too bad. It was a pretty minor concussion, but it was still something I took good care of because concussions are. I think I'd rather blow a knee nowadays than get another concussion because the brain doesn't heal very well. I've been super fortunate to not have any more concussions, and actually I haven't really gotten injured free skiing. And I think the main reason of that is maybe because the snow is quite a bit softer. Yeah. I've definitely hit my head on like tomahawking your head like 8 times, but it's really soft, so the snow kind of takes the impact for you. But my health is pretty good, I'd say. My shoulders and back are a little sore, but I try and stay on top of them and stretch and do exercises to keep them healthy. And
I remember when we were younger, there was even, you were worried about skiing then with concussions. So you just kept going, essentially.
Yeah, I just kept going. I didn't listen to the doctors. Like, oh yeah, I remember that actually. We were in Calgary and I had a concussion. I think we were training GS at Nikiska, and I went to the doctor and he told me I should pick up a sport like ping pong or swimming. And I was like, that's a good joke, but when can I get back to snow? He's like, no, I'm not joking. And I was like, you take skiing away from me, you like kind of take my life away from me.
Was that when you were racing like 10 years ago?
That's when I was racing, yeah.
So that was 10 years ago and you kept 10 going.
10 years ago. I kept going. But I mean, that's kind of, it's a little bit of the reason too. I quit ski cross. it's a high impact sport, and you're not always at fault too. Like people can take you out, and you do make contact like quite often. And I was watching people just drop like flies. I feel like every race, if not every other race, someone has a season-ending injury. I mean, we also race, like men and women race the same World Cup tour. They're on the tour together. Yeah, almost every race, someone has a season-ending injury. And I was kind of looking at that, and I'm like, I can't afford to hit my head really hard and get injured again. So even though now I definitely could still, I'm still at risk of that free skiing, but it doesn't seem like it's happened yet. Knock on wood.
But what's interesting is that, 10 years ago, you were kind of told by a doctor that you probably should stop skiing, in his opinion.
Yeah.
Fast forward 10 years later, you're a high performing sponsored skier doing tons of backcountry stuff, high performing athlete, essentially. It's interesting to just kind of, get that perspective on medical opinion. And, sometimes maybe it's, not right. You're still competing and still performing. And, if you had listened to that doctor's advice, probably there was concern and merit behind it.
Maybe I'd be a businessman or something and not loving life.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I would be enjoying life, but who knows? I think it's also, it's definitely a risk I'm willing to take, I guess, to live the life I do and keep skiing, because I absolutely love skiing, and it's actually helped me many ways. My sister had a bad car accident about 4 years ago, ended up being quadriplegic, and I was having a pretty tough time mentally with that. And going skiing was like an escape, it kind of made me forget about it for a little bit. Also gave me another perspective in life, it's like when you're up in the mountains and you're climbing up a mountain, let's say, and you get to the top, it's like a feeling that's pretty hard to explain, but it's pretty surreal. And it's really cool, and to be up there and just take a moment and take it all in and realize how fortunate you are to be able to live this lifestyle. It's kind of humbling and it's cool. And it actually skiing really helped me with my sister, because they would kind of take me out of it, me forget about it for a few minutes, or even sometimes I'd think of her while I was doing it and be like, I'm doing this for her. And it was cool. It actually really, really helped me mentally deal with her accident. And now it's kind of cool actually watching her. She's motivating me, because she's so positive and really striving to be better. And now she's trying to get a new career for herself. You kind of have to pinch yourself when you wake up and you're like, you can have a bad day. You got to I try to think of her,
gratitude,
how tough she is. And it's gratitude. Exactly. You're only going to have a bad day if you let yourself have a bad day. If you're positive and you stay positive, you're going to have days that aren't as good as others, for sure. If you're positive about it, you can still have a pretty the bad days can still be pretty good. Absolutely.
So going forward, what's the plans for the rest of the year, the next couple of years?
Last couple of years, our focus has definitely been a lot of it has been towards producing our blank movies, which is really fun because we get set up our own trips, make the movie that we want to make, which is super fun. So we put a lot of energy into that. And then there's always the odd Salomon Freeride TV that we do and little projects. I usually try and do 2 other projects a year just to change it up a little bit and get a little more diversity and exposure that way too. Mm-hmm. Maybe do a couple of photography trips and then maybe do a couple film trips. Last year I went to Jackson Hole and I've always wanted to go there. And I got the opportunity to do that with a little trip that one of my friends asked me to do. He's actually our co-producer of the movie and a filmer, Jeff Thomas. And he asked me to go down there for that. And that was awesome. Super fun trip. And the mountain down there is awesome. I've never been. I've just always seen it in the ski movies, and we hit it with pretty good conditions, and it was a lot of fun.
So the goal is to keep producing content. Do you guys have one movie a year goal or 2, or is there a major film?
So this year we're making a full-length film, but we're also making a social miniseries. So it's kind of behind the scenes of what's going on while we're filming. Yeah. Which I think will be fun. Not everyone has time for a 45-minute sit down and watch a ski movie these days. Extension pan online is very very short, I find, these days. So if you can produce little 1-minute clips and that are kind of fun to watch, and kind of gives you guys gives the viewer an insight of what we do, like not just ski gnarly lines, but the process we have to go through that. Or a lot of the times we're just bullshitting.
Yeah.
We're on the radios making fun of each other or whatever, but we're just having fun with it. That's the main part of it. Pretty much create content that resonates with people, and shoot some photos, create a ski movie that hopefully people like.
You had one released in the fall, right? That was
our latest movie. It was called 7 Stages of Blank.
And was that your major film for the year then?
That was our major film for the year, and we actually won Powder Award with it. We won Best Powder. Powder Awards are like the Academy Awards for ski movies, I guess. Yeah, and we won Best Powder Award, which was awesome. And that was just because of how much we went to Mount Baker. We were in Tahoe. We got like insane amount of snow, and not many people were there for those storms, which was awesome because we pretty much were the only ones that got like. I mean, I wasn't in Tahoe, but Mount Baker was insane. I've been to Japan 4 times, and I think it was the deepest snow I've ever skied.
So what's deep?
Like 75 centimeters fresh POW overnight.
Every run.
Like almost a meter. Oh yeah, because we were just ski touring. We were skiing the trees. Because if you skied the resort on that day, you had had a couple laps, and then after it would be skied up. But we were just skiing kind of road laps, breaking trail up to your, like, no joke, when you're on a bit of a steeper slope, I was breaking trail like up to my shoulders almost.
Holy cow.
Yeah. It's almost like to the point where it's too deep too, because you can barely do like 4 turns and you can barely see yourself. You just, all you see is poles sticking out of the snow.
Yeah. But that's a dream for filming.
Oh, that's a dream for filming and for skiing. But that's when you wish you were just free skiing, because then you could do 15 laps instead of doing 3.
Yeah. So more movies, more skiing. If you were looking back on your career as a skier, what advice would you give to a young skier coming up? Anything you would avoid or not do?
I definitely wouldn't get 10 concussions. That's a big one. I'd recommend not doing that. But I think for young skiers, is the most important is to really be passionate about what you're doing. Yeah, just love every minute of it. Don't take yourself too seriously until a little later on, until you're maybe a teenager. Just kind of do it because you love it. Don't do it because you want to make someone proud or you want to achieve something. I think if you love what you're doing and you work hard at it, you can definitely have a lot of success by just doing that. A lot of kids are sometimes too hard on themselves too. They take themselves too seriously, and then you start getting frustrated, and it kind of over time it kind of wears down, and then you start not enjoying it as much as you used to. So I think for me, what's important is have fun with it and work hard at it.
I think that's a good way to look at life too, or anything you're doing in sport or work. And
if you enjoy what you're doing too, you're more likely to put more effort into it, know, and try and get better at it. For sure. I think it's a good motivator, love what you do.
Well, I think that's a great place to leave it. Thanks, Stan. I appreciate you taking the time to go over your career and where things are at now with Blank Collective. So
thanks for having me. I've been sipping on a nice Rose Bros coffee the whole time of the conversation, so it's nice. It's kept me fired up and sharp the whole time.
All right, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Trevor.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed the show. If you liked what you heard, head over to rosebros.ca where we will have upcoming episodes. You can also find our coffee and chocolate there, where we plant 1 tree for every bag or bar sold through our partnership with One Tree Planted, a non-for-profit organization focused on global reforestation. Otherwise, until next time, happy coffee drinking.